I would say that generally the right do get censored more, but I also say the right spreads way more misinformation.
Let's talk about free speech, because it seems like you've had your own personal battles with Twitch and Twitter, which I believe you're not on either of those platforms now.
Not at the moment, no.
Not at the moment.
Yeah.
And
who knows? Maybe by the time this airs, maybe I'll be back on both. You know,
right,
there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world right now. Who knows?
Yeah,
but
Babylon Bee and Jordan Peterson just got put back on Twitter at the time that we're talking right now. So maybe you're up next on the roster there. With you being taken off those platforms, it seems like you don't have a reason for why. They didn't really tell you.
I mean, it's a hate speech for both. I'm just not sure
what the
that
specific.
means. Yeah. 'Cause I mean, like,
with how many words you throw out.
Yeah, I'm a very progressive person, so like I'm not like generally my bread and butter content over the past years. People generally know me for arguing against conservatives, although for the past couple of years there's been a lot of lefties too. But yeah.
Right. So I hear a lot of conservatives say that the censorship on these platforms is skewed towards targeting people on the right and targeting conservatives. Obviously, you've had an experience that's antithetical to that. What is your thought, seemingly, because you're in that space? I don't know a lot of leftist streamers. Are you seeing the same amounts of censorship across both sides?
So this is a really hard question. I would say that generally the right do get censored more. But I also say the right spreads way more misinformation.
Okay.
So it's like, it's a very complicated thing, and that like, I don't like that a lot of the censorship seems to hit. Like, there are certain topics that I would just leave alone. Like, I don't know if platforms should be censoring for hate speech, unless you're literally calling people racial slurs. I was like, okay, sure. But like past that, like you should probably just let that conversation stay, because there's,
I agree.
it just gets into a nightmare when we start trying to figure out like what is hate speech and what isn't hate speech. When it comes to the misinformation topics, so I used to be a big fan of saying that like misinformation, there's that quote, there's like 50 million iterations of it, but I think the most common one is by the time lies made it halfway around the world, the truth barely has its pants on, or whatever.
Yeah.
I used to think that it was so much easier to propagate lies than it is to kind of like tell the truth, but I've actually had a radical change on that over the past 6 months, where I think that what happens is I think that if you think that you have the truly correct answer, it feels like you don't feel like you have an obligation to make that message like palatable to people. So on one end, you'll have somebody that I would say is like spreading misinformation, but their shows are entertaining, their people are funny, they've got like ways of like presenting this that's like very relatable and awesome. And then on the other hand, you've got like read this Nature study that's like 72 pages long,
right?
And it's right. And it's like, okay, well, that's not very compelling.
Exactly.
You know? And it's kind of funny because one of the reasons I got into debate and doing all this like 6 years ago was because I thought that like the left had a lot of good arguments for a lot of things, but man, they never tried to present any of them. It was always just the moral grandstanding and the beating you over the head, like, you're a racist, you're a racist. Okay, well, explain why, you know? So yeah, I think that misinformation can be combated, but I think that the people that are telling the truth need to do a way better job at like presenting that information. It can't just be enough to say, here's my peer-reviewed study, I'm right, you're wrong, you know, you're be done or whatever, And
that's the thing, I saw you get into this with Lex Friedman, of like a lot of people blame the media for what they're putting out, but the media is a reflection of people and actually what they want to see, so there's no incentive to be truthful. I don't know how you go about making the truth more palatable, and how you go about, you know, not putting out the peer-reviewed study and still truncating that information. And it seems like the people who do on either sides of the political aisle are just ignored, and the real meat as far as what people are watching and what people are being entertained by are the people who just want to like argue their feelings. And
I mean, feelings are important. You can argue them. Just make it entertaining. Just do something good. Like a lot of people don't even try. Like I did this whole arc where I'm arguing like race realism and stuff, and I've got to dig through like so much stuff. I was like, man, why am I doing any of this? Like, shouldn't there be like IQ researchers that like enter the arena and give opinions on this? But nobody wants to because they're scared. Because academics by nature tend to be there's a stronger word than careful. They're trying to be like very careful, cautious, because they don't want to like enter an opinion that's not like 100% vetted.
Right.
For a lot of them, it's like, I do research and I teach. I'm not going to like enter the social media sphere and like shake things up because it's like kind of scary. And then what they basically say is that like, I tell this to the left all the time, and it's funny because people have a lot of meme comics with literally Dennis, I think, in them, where people on the left are like, it's not my job to educate you. And then Dennis on the other side is like, I would love to educate you. And it's like, that's what's going to happen, you know? When no academic wants to enter into the fray and start talking about like climate change or race realism or economics or any of these like very controversial topics, okay, well, you guys aren't going to talk about it, but they are, and they're still going to talk about it, you know? The left blames the left gets really mad when figures like Jordan Peterson And Andrew Tate and all these people get really big, like talking to young men. And it's like, okay, well, on the left, all you guys have said is young men over and over and over and over again for like 10 years. Like, well, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, you created the space for them to be born. And as soon as you get rid of the Jordan Petersons, then it becomes the Sneakos. And then as soon as you get rid of the Sneakos, it becomes the Andrew Tates. And then you get rid of the Andrew Tates and it becomes like the 4chan message board guys.
Yeah, you can only ban individuals. You're not going to ban the ideas, right?
Exactly. And the ideas are just going to get more pervasive the more that you ban them. So you created a clear distinction, obviously, between hate speech and misinformation on the internet. Do you think that they should be treated differently, that hate speech is probably something that should be left on the internet and maybe misinformation harder policed, or all of it's allowed?
The thing is, when it comes to hate speech, like, we have all these sophisticated tools to block stuff, okay?
Yeah.
Like I said earlier that like for like slurs and stuff, maybe you could ban this, but even for that, like, can't you just like put it on a filter? Like, if you don't want to see it, like, block it.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't know why, like, I think I joked before, like, we should remove all block features like from all social media, because it seems like you never block anybody now, you just report them if you don't like them. And it's like, yeah. For misinformation, I really like the approach of, if there's a controversial topic, like, have like a link to an article at the bottom. Okay. That's fine. So if you publish some shit on vaccines or climate change or whatever, and YouTube is like, hey, if you want more information, check here, I think that's fine, like, going to that level. But yeah, when you start, I mean, like, just imagine you're a guy that's sitting at home and you're trying to listen to some guy saying, I think the government is like kind of corrupt and they're hiding all the information from you and the bureaucrats are working together to screw you over and give you bad medicine. And you're like, oh, and then it's like, oh, wait, that video just got removed from Google. And then I read an article saying that there's coordination between like Facebook, YouTube, and the government on like what's being policed. And it's like, maybe, like, you can understand why people get those ideas.
Exactly.
Like, Jesus, yeah.
And then they go to corners of the internet where they're allowed to express those ideas.
Oh,
and it's just like, you see all this conversation about like incels and people on 4chan, and people are complaining about it and screaming about it and saying the message boards need to be taken down, and you don't understand that they're just going to find a new place, and it's going to be an even worse place than the one that they were previously functioning on. And that conversation for some reason is so lost on people, and I don't know, maybe it's just an emotionally driven thing. You just don't want to see things that you dislike, and that's people's immediate thought. You've said things that people dislike quite a bit, and you're known for being sometimes crass, and sometimes crass, not always. You haven't been too crass during this interview, and you and Lex Fridman got into this and talking about the R word in particular, and it was interesting because I think he took a very, very sensitive approach to that word, and it's fine. Every individual has their different reactions to what people say, but I'm of the space that N-word, R-word, F-word, all of that should be able to exist freely on the internet, and you seemingly agree with that.
Yeah, well, to be clear, there's a big difference between should be able to exist and do I want to use these words, right?
Right, sure.
Typically, my approach to language is, so firstly, I am of the mindset that I feel incredibly responsible for my audience. So I think that my audience is a reflection of who I am. If they act in certain ways, it's because of a message that I'm putting out there. So if they're doing things that I don't like, then I'll try to adjust my behavior accordingly. When I think of words that I use to attack people, what I try not to do is I don't want to cast too wide of a net to make people like feel attacked that shouldn't feel attacked. So things like homophobic slurs, I don't want to use a word like that, and then there's somebody that is homophobic who thinks like, oh, hell yeah, like this guy's homophobic like I am, or somebody that's gay, and they're like, oh, well, that kind of sucks, I feel like a little bit shit on, So that's generally my approach when I'm kind of picking and choosing, like, are these words okay, are these words not okay? Like, do we want to attack people for like how they look? Like, do I want to call somebody a fat Well, I probably have a lot of overweight people that watch me because I'm an American, this is America. Like, I don't know if I feel, maybe I shouldn't do it, So that's kind of how I navigate it. There's a special word, a special gamer word in all of our hearts. It's like the last bastion of slurs that we have. And it's this word, retarded. And I've gone back and forth on this. There have been times I was like, okay, I think we're going to stop saying the word retarded. But then when I think about it, the place that I'm at right now is that it's a really good word for calling somebody stupid. It gets the point across very well. And I don't know if it is a word that is ever like incorporated in any part of our society to attack like mentally disabled people. Right. It doesn't feel that way. So I feel like it's not like it's not like the F slur, like the one for gay people.
Has a very direct link.
And it's like, you're bad because you're gay, right? And it's like, well, there shouldn't probably be anything wrong with being gay. Like, you don't need to attack somebody for that.
Sure.
Or at least that's what I think.
Yes, I agree.
But when it comes to like, when it comes to retarded, well, being developmentally disabled, that is a bad thing, You're not attacking the person, but that thing is like pretty bad to be developmentally disabled. And I don't know if disabled people, if that is like a word like it is used as much. So I guess in my mind, I just kind of like, this is probably fine. I don't know if this is actually increasing. It's funny because in my community recently, I was like, okay, we're going to not say retarded it anymore. There's a woman that came on and she started arguing. She started using the word remedial.
Okay.
And I was like, we're going to use the word remedial instead of retarded because it sounds nicer, yeah?
Yeah,
but it's funny, I got a couple emails, and after reading them, I started thinking about, like, my own son, and I was like, if my kid was, like, autistic, or if my kid had, like, a developmental disability, I don't know if hearing the word retarded would bother me. I don't think so. He has ADHD, but hearing the word retarded doesn't bother me. But if he was like developmentally challenged and he was in special classes and I was calling people you remedial fuck, and if my kid was taking like remedial English, that actually would make me feel like, so we stopped that. I was like, remedial is actually worse than retarded. We're not going to use that word. So yeah, I don't know. And in 5 years, I'm sure I probably won't be using it anymore, but this is just my last bastion of insulting word. Yeah.
So you're looking ahead and you're thinking, okay, maybe those words and phrases are going to be gone. That's really interesting.
But it is like a treadmill because it's like at some point, like, because like dumb, idiot, and moron, I think, were all like IQ descriptors, and they're not really anymore. Like maybe retarded won't be. Who knows?
Yeah, it's, I think, just words shift and everything. And I think it's interesting that we are trying to just like cushion the world a little bit too much. And I mean, the words exist. People are going to hear them in both negative contexts and in contexts that you could, look at subjectively and say, well, that wasn't the worst framing of that word. And to be so strong in policing words, I think is just to the detriment of everybody. I think you can decide whether or not you're offended by something, and that's a personal choice that you make, but to tell somebody else not to use a specific word, for me.
Yeah, maybe. One of the things that sucks about a lot of the kind of like progressive push on things is we see a lot of the bad. We see the people arguing that like, I'm not going to kill this character in The Boys because they're a strong lesbian, or I want to have, a lot of people got mad at black elves, I guess. I don't know if that was a huge thing for Lord of the Rings. A lot of people
I didn't watch Taylor's a fan of Lord of the Rings.
It's always funny to me when people come out with like, well, black elves actually canonically weren't part of the Tolkien universe and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God, like, wow, you're really invested. Like, what was your favorite Lord of the Rings movie? Like, I haven't seen any of them.
Yeah.
Okay. You care so much about it. Yeah, I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah.
But I will say that, and I'm 33. I come from the old internet, okay? The old internet was like everybody's in a Yahoo chat room with like two like 42-year-old men trying to pick up like 12-year-old girls, okay? The old internet was a wild, crazy place where we're saying shit that would make Hitler blush, okay? These chat rooms were crazy. Yeah. And I miss that, and I like that. I love that. It was a lot of fun. That's why I have like my debate background, because it's fun to argue and chat to people. But today, it's really cool that in online spaces, now you have huge communities of women, you've got huge communities of black people, you've got, in my community, I've got a huge community of trans people. It's cool that the internet has opened up and broadened itself to welcome like all sorts of different types of people. And it's really cool that in media now, you've got like a lot of movies that have, even if some of them are cringe, you've got like a lot of women, you've got a lot of Asian people, black people, you've got like all sorts of different types. I think that's really cool. There's been a lot of progress made there. I will agree that in some places it's gone like way too far, but it is cool that like every movie that comes out now isn't like an entourage of like 6 white dudes and like an evil like brown Muslim guy, and then like every video game is like all white people all speaking English. So yeah, I mean there's like pros and cons. It's hard to see the pros, it's easy to see the cons, and I do agree we push too far sometimes. But
do you think you are stronger mentally for having gone through the sort of old internet phase, or is that something you could have done without like the harsh language and the people on the message boards like literally obliterating everything in your life? Has that shaped your view of language and your lack of sensitivity towards it?
Absolutely. Yeah. But the thing that sucks the most, and that's why you should never listen to people that are in my position, is people have really bad survivorship bias. For whatever combination of like biological and like very early upbringing factors. Like I'm the kind of, have you ever seen the movie Whiplash?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how I like people to encourage me. And I like, it sucks because I even like, my wife is like a big, like, likes compliments, language of love or whatever. Yeah. My motivating factor is usually somebody saying like, you're a stupid piece of shit and you'll never do this. When somebody's like, oh, good job, great job. All I think is like, I could have done better. Like, I don't even want to hear, like, or like, she's like, oh, you look so handsome or whatever. It's like, I'm your husband. Of course you think I look handsome. I don't care what you say. Right. That's just like the kind of thing, like, I'm driven forward by negativity in a really positive way. It makes me feel good. But that's a really rare quality. It's a super rare quality. I think a lot of people in this world might possess a quality like that. But if you put 100 people in a room and you break them down and destroy them, two people will walk out of the room and be like, I'm ready to destroy the world. And I'm one of those two people. That's really fun. Okay. But most people are just going to be fucking destroyed, What was it? MK Ultra, where they did experiments or whatever, where I think one of the things they did was they brought students in, and they were posing as like, we're going to do a psych experiment. We just want to like talk to you about your life or whatever. And they would bring these students in and they would do a lot of background research on them. And when they'd get this interviewer with a student, they would just destroy them. They would tear down every single part of their life. And they'd go in on them over and over and over again. And I don't know if you've heard this story before, but one of the students was a very, very, very bright math student. It was Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. He was one of the students that was in that program.
I had not heard. That's wild.
Yeah, so it's like, so not everybody responds to stress like the same way. You are going to have a few exceptional people. And when I say exceptional, I don't mean better or good. Just they're the exception, and they come out, way better for it. I think I'm one of those people. I really like that. But most people won't. And if you throw most people in that environment expecting them to be the exception, you're setting everybody up for failure.
Fair enough. Yeah, that makes me think of this. I think it was in the book Freakonomics or something like that, where these two twins, one was raised with the name winner, one with the name loser, and the kid with the name loser just had like totally different outcomes just by being berated by the name, and winner went on to be really successful. But that's neither here nor there.